Hello and welcome to another episode of Cellar Notes. I'm your bright, shiny red, SPF impaired host, Matt Getch, and today I've got with me a very talented winemaker from New Zealand. He's been in the business for over 25 years, making wines from Bordeaux to Chile, from New Zealand to Napa Valley. I'd like you all to welcome my new friend, Simon Fell. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad you could make it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Matt, as you said, I've been in the industry now for over 25 years. Grew up, born and bred in Auckland, New Zealand, but like every sort of Kiwi, when I graduated from university, I went overseas and I lived in the United Kingdom for about 3 years. And it was there actually I got a taste for wine. So when I started travelling around France and Italy, you know, got interested in wine, and when I wasn't chasing French girls, I was in a bar drinking wine. So I returned to New Zealand in the early 1990s, and it was actually a really perfect time to get involved in the New Zealand wine scene. We were really blooming, like 1995, I think it was when Cloudy Bay put New Zealand Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc on the map, and so there was a real boom in our industry.
Sauvignon Blanc is kind of a tough thing for people to get into, like Chardonnay. You don't just jump into white wine and start drinking Chardonnay because it's on the drier side. And Sauvignon Blanc kind of, I think, has that stigma as well, that if people would start with New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, I think they'd find it a lot more palatable because you get a lot less of that minerally, herbal, floral, you know, flavors and smells that come out of domestic, you know, United States Sauvignon Blancs, and you move into more of a citrusy, you know, fruity, like you were saying before, lemony and passion fruit and grapefruit and all sorts of fun stuff. It's a lot easier for people to drink. Yeah,
exactly, and I think that's what makes, you know, especially Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc so unique. You know, the consumer have really fallen in love with that particular style, and you know, it's put us on the map as an industry. And you know, and then if you want to sort of experiment a little bit more with New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, you can look at some other regions too. You know, like for example, if you move into the North Island, into Hawke's Bay, you know, some of the Sauvignon Blancs there are more into that sort of a little bit more ripe, a bit more sort of stone fruit flavour spectrum, a little bit lower acidity, probably pretty similar to some of the Sauvignon Blancs you're going to see in Bordeaux, you know, and so it's again another regional distinctive difference. Auckland traditionally is the foundation of the New Zealand wine industry. It was back in the sort of you know, turn of the last century, was where like a lot of the immigrants first moved to, and so they started a lot of farming around the sort of outskirts of Auckland, out west there, and set up little vineyards. And so most of the big companies now in New Zealand have their headquarters in Auckland. But as the industry evolved and we discovered better growing areas, most of the grape growing now is down the line. So Marlborough is New Zealand's largest wine growing region. You know, represents sort of 75% of all planted vineyards in New Zealand. And also the second largest is Hawke's Bay, and then the third largest is Gisborne.
Yeah, you see Marlborough everywhere. It seems to be the most popular. It's also the largest.
Yeah.
Is it the best terroir as well for growing the wine?
I don't know if it's the best terroir there, Matt, but it's different. And what makes Marlborough so unique is its particular area and climatic conditions. And you know, as you know, I mean, New Zealand's a small nation, you know, made up of 2 islands, and but the diversity of geography and soil types is very diverse, and the reason for that is, you know, New Zealand was formed on sort of volcanic and tectonic activity millions of years ago, so within a small area there's this huge diversity of geography. And for Marlborough, it's quite a large area in general. However, within the Marlborough greater region, there's lots of different little sub-regions that make up the greater Marlborough picture.
All right, so why don't we talk a little bit about Villa Maria, the company you're working for now, and the wines that they make?
So yeah, like Villa Maria has been around a long time now in New Zealand. It was founded by Sir George Fistanich back in 1961. So we have been in operation now for over 4 years. And so still run by Sir George. He's the CEO and general manager, and his daughter Karen sits on the board of directors. 100% family owned still. with George, I mean, he's so iconic in the New Zealand wine industry. He's sort of the equivalent of Robert Mondavi for New Zealand.
Right.
You know, he's been a real pioneer, a real innovator, and a lot of companies look to him and his vision of what he's doing for the industry.
Speaking of his pioneering, they're doing a lot of work in sustainability and green farming and that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a real focus as our business model over the last sort of 20, 30 years, and we're really sort of leading the charge in that. You know, for us, within the employees and within the business, you know, it's part of our sort of ethos in a way, and you know, so it's not really just looking at protecting the land, but it's also looking to put something back into the system for future generations. And with George being so focused, you know, on being family, you know, he wants something left for his grandchildren.
So Villa Maria's headquarters is in Auckland, correct?
Yes, yep. So that's where I'm based, and so we make all the wines out of North Island in Auckland, and then we have our other facility down in Marlborough, which we make all our Sauvignon Blanc and our Pinot Noir.
Is that, where does a lot of the where's the estate vineyard wines coming from?
So in Marlborough and also out of Hawke's Bay and Gisborne. As George has grown the business over the last 50 years, you know, when he first founded it, it was only like 5 acres based in Auckland, and now with a mixture of company owned, company leased and contract growers, we have around about 2,000 hectares under management. So
holy smoke, that's a lot of wine.
Yeah, it's a lot of wine.
So let's talk about a little bit of the wine that we've got, a little show and tell here. Why don't you show us what we've got and tell us a little bit about each one of the wines?
Yeah, so Matt, so within the Villa Maria portfolio here, we have 4 tiers really. So we have our private bin tier, which is this label here. And so this wine here, these are our most popular wines within the portfolio. These wines are designed to be about approachability, drinkability, and as I say, our biggest volume, and you know, very, very easy drinking style wines.
Your every person wine, something that
exactly.
can go with a lot of different kinds of food.
Exactly, and just for people coming into the wine industry and wanting something enjoyable but not quite sure what they want, these wines really deliver in that category. Then the next tier up is our cellar selection, which is our gold label there, and these wines are all about, again, about that approachability, but they have a little bit more concentration, a little bit more richness and elegance. They're very food-friendly style wines, so they do very well for us in the on-premise market. And then above that tier, we have our black labels, which are our reserve and our single vineyard wines. So these represent less than 8% of our production, and we don't make them every year if the quality's not there. But the more a reflection of, you know, looking at a particular, say, sub-region, or with our single vineyard wines, a particular vineyard site.
That's where you can get into the subtleties, and you can do a glass-by-glass comparison. Some will have more of a specific flavor profile than others. Yeah,
that's correct. So, like, you know, within 4 tiers, we offer something for every consumer, from the entry level right through to the connoisseur. And I mean, when you think about it, for New Zealand wines in general, I mean, in terms of quality, even at the higher end, I mean, with our reserve wines and single vineyard wines, they're still very affordable compared to, say, what you'd be paying for Burgundy or Bordeaux. And so I do encourage a lot of consumers to get out there and try these wines, and you'll be amazed actually at the diversity and quality of New Zealand wines at that level. Not only, you know, for Sauvignon Blanc, which is our sort of bread and butter for the industry, but also for, you know, Pinot Noir. You know, Pinot Noir is New Zealand's #1 red planted variety. You know, it's well suited to all the major wine growing regions of New Zealand because of, you know, it's classed as a cool climate red varietal. It has these beautiful sort of perfumed notes of, you know, like red fruits and cherry and violets, but some really nice sort of underlying sort of natural sort of acidity and really fine-grained tannins. And so Pinot Noir out of, say, the Marlborough region, you know, is very, very approachable in that real sort of perfume style and very elegant. And then you move down to, say, Central Otago Pinot Noir, and the fruit spectrum is a little bit different. It moves into more of that darker fruit spectrum, a bit more sort of black fruits, sort of dark cherry, a little bit more fuller bodied tannin. Probably closest what you'd compare it to here in the States would be something like out of, say, Oregon, you know, more into that darker fruit spectrum. And then you get up into the North Island, into say Martinborough, which is a famous region for New Zealand Pinot Noir, and the Pinots that come out of that area are more into that beautiful, more savoury, sort of more forest floor, sort of bit more juicier sort of tannin fruit spectrum.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the things I was going to ask, because everybody knows New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. That's the first thing they think of. New Zealand wine, oh, it's a Sauvignon Blanc. But there's a lot of other varietals that are being grown down there, other than just Sauvignon Blanc. You mentioned Pinot Noir. Are there a lot of others? Is it a big Cabernet Merlot blending region?
Yeah, absolutely. Like for the Bordeaux blends, for Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon and Malbec, Hawke's Bay is the area to go to. You know, being up there in the North Island, further north than Marlborough, a lot warmer. You know, growing season, and so if you find good sites, like we have the site called the Gibbet Gravels, you can get those varieties quite ripe and produce some beautiful sort of Bordeaux style wines. You know, probably quite similar to Bordeaux in style, say compared to say a Merlot or a Cabernet out of California or Australia, but also still very New Zealand and style. It really reflects the sort of taste of what New Zealand's all about. And there's some wonderful sort of Merlot Cabernet blends that we do within our portfolio, and especially at the reserve end. You know, these are small volumes, obviously. You know, probably some of them are less than sort of 500 cases, but beautiful concentrated, rich wines, and these wines all cellar, you know, beautifully over the next sort of, you know, 10, 20 years. And being under screw cap, and it's probably a nice time to bring this up. You know, we're finding now that our top reserve wines are aging beautifully under screw cap, and so don't be put off if you see a wine under screw cap.
No, I tell people that all the time. Villa Maria was actually one of the first people to use the screw cap, was it not?
Yeah, we were part of the screw cap initiative back in 2001, and so we were the first company to jump on to screw cap 100%. And as you know, at the time, I mean, in New Zealand, we were a very small industry. I think we're less than 1% of the global wine production. So a lot of the quality cork we were getting back in the sort of mid-90s to late 90s was a little bit more inferior. So we were actually losing between sort of 5 to 8% of our production, either through faulty cork, through oxidation, cork taint. And so we had to look at another method of closure. And when the technology came around for screw caps under Stelvin, you know, we were pretty happy with the you know, the quality issues, and yeah, so we went 100% all on board.
Yeah, I've seen the industry kind of leaning that way too. A lot of the upper class, you know, the upper echelon, some of the more expensive wines are using screw caps now, just because there's really no benefit to a cork other than that sound that you get out of it. And it's a very satisfying sound, but other than that, everything else, the Stelvin closure, the screw cap is far, far superior. There's not nearly as many problems with them. They keep just as well. Easier to open.
Yeah, so true, Matt. And we've looked at wines, you know, when we went to screw cap in 2001, I mean, we'd been doing a number of trials for quite a number of years. And every now and then we'll still pull some cork samples back from the sort of mid-90s, late 90s, and look at some of those trials compared to what we put under screw cap. And under screw cap, the wine looks a lot younger, a lot fresher, a bit more vibrant still compared to the one under cork.
So Villa Maria, definitely a vineyard that people need to check out and come in and ask for some of their wines, get some of the new varietals, and actually explore New Zealand a little bit.
Absolutely.
Other than just your mass-produced New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs. There's a lot more out there for people to try.
You know, we're not stooped in tradition down in New Zealand, so we've got the ability to plant what we want and see what fits. And as the industry grows and we've become a little bit more mature and working out our sites and things like that, we're sort of putting in these new varieties. So it's quite exciting for the industry.
Well, thanks for coming to join us today, Simon. I hope that everybody listening and watching goes out and tries some new Villa Maria wines and gets to explore New Zealand a little bit. I very much appreciate you being here and joining us and sharing your knowledge. And join us again here sometime on Cellar Notes. Thank you.
Thank you.